Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. You can find us on the web at hsstaffing.com. I hope you'll consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and professional writing needs. Momentarily, I will be joined by Alan Grossman for a discussion on marketing community building initiatives. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap companies to nonprofits, as well as high-net-worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at info@pk-cpas.com or call them at 973-882-8810. They will be happy to be of service. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bruce. Great to be with you today.
It is my pleasure. Please take a moment or two and introduce yourself to our viewers.
Alan Grossman, long-term marketing communications professional, primarily in the nonprofit field for most of my career, Jewish nonprofit in particular, Federation, JNF, Bar-Ilan University, and Masorti. And then most recently, switched gears and was in the for-profit field and just recently with SSP Architects in Somerville, New Jersey. And so that was, still a very community-oriented type of firm. So the switch was a very natural progression, and it had worked out. And I did some great work for them for the last year and a half.
It's funny, most people, I want to reword that, most companies have a problem taking someone from the nonprofit field into the for-profit field, or from the for-profit field into the nonprofit field. So because the architecture firm that you were with was mission-driven, it was an easy transition?
Right. As you say, usually get pigeonholed, especially in the Jewish communal field. Typically, that's it. But it was, as I say, a very nice transition because they do a lot of schools, hospitals, a very civic-oriented type of architecture, public spaces. So my community building marketing skills were really put to good use there, and I was able to very easily adapt the content. Really, the heart of their work is all about building community, the built environment. So it was a very natural progression from what I have been doing for many, many years, primarily for Jewish nonprofits. So again, all about people, about building community is ultimately what it's about.
What is a community building initiative?
For the architecture firm or
anything?
In general? In general,
I don't mean a specific example,
right.
Or you can give one if you want,
right.
But just in general, what is a community building initiative?
Right. I think I've definitely been luckily part of many of them. I think one of the nice examples was when I was at Bergen County, the Federation up there. We launched a community-wide mitzvah day, which grew from a few hundred participants. Now we're close to 2,000 a year and about 50 sites. Again, it comes back to people really wanting to give back to their community, to feel that they're taking action that really bring them closer to the people and helping people, whether it be development disabled. The JCC had programs for Israel, getting their kids involved, seeing the parents and kids come together. So that's really what it's about, showing the examples for the next generation. And then keeping on, that one day often led to many dozens of people continuing through the year to help at different food banks and at the old age homes and so on. So it really was a great type of initiative that really reflects the best of the community. Great to be part of that marketing launch, and that work has continued through the years and has grown into one of the great community building programs. I think of Federation as it's nationwide, really.
So what I'm hearing is a community building initiative is really a participatory event that will continue every whatever. Let's say, for sake of argument, it would be annual.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I've got that right,
then
my next question is, how do you market something like that?
I definitely, it's all hands on board with any marketing type of project. I was fortunate to work with a very strong Jewish Community Relations Council, synagogue leadership initiative up in Bergen at that point. And we all worked very closely together to have it out and about, you name it, online, in those days, much more print oriented. So we had it, we had 2 pages in the Jewish Standard. We had the pre-publicity, post-publicity, got it out to, through the websites and social networks. So everybody felt good about seeing themselves being part of a great community day of activity and supporting those at risk in the community. So, and that's really the key and then the follow-up is really the key, is just to keep that momentum going. So one nice thing about having it annually is that you can, you're already planning ahead and sending stories of people who've done great things and people who've been helped, even more importantly, from that activity and what has grown over the year. And you already have your marketing set up for the following year.
I remember that when I was with Jewish nonprofits and secular nonprofits for that matter, and we would have an annual event, someone would come over to me and say, "What are you going to do tomorrow?" after the event was over. And I said, "Well, tomorrow I sleep. The day after tomorrow, I start work on next year."
Right. But you right away need that follow-up is really key. Another big event we had up there was the Jersey to Jerusalem mission, which about almost close to 400 people were part of. But again, the key was we had a great time in Israel and there was a lot of learning, but really the follow-ups were the key to keep the marketing going. So we had individual kind of parties for about 4 or 5 different regions of where people were active with the mission. The leadership was involved. I mean, that's really the key to any project. It's back to the future when it comes to the importance of leadership involvement, whether it be in the campaign type of project or a mission to Israel or a trip to Israel, whatever they're calling it these days, or a mitzvah day project. So it's really, we had great chairs. They were willing to do the hosting of follow-up events that kept the momentum going so that we didn't lose people over that time.
For those who are not aware, a mitzvah is a righteous deed.
Right.
Now, in my time, we would have parlor meetings. Someone would volunteer their home, and we'd meet in their home, have up to 20, 25 people. And it was great. That's how it wasn't for fundraising. It was for, I hated when they would say, it's not fundraising, it's fundraising. It was for getting volunteers, getting people to become involved. Now that was 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. Can you do that today virtually?
You can. There's always something nice though about being in person. As I say, after the COVID, it really changed a lot, as you well know. But I think one of the more, you really have to go to people these days as far as where they're at. And then I think, because now Saudi did it well as far as in Bergen County, we had a few parlor meetings, and you really do get a lot more out of it it's really a lot about the interaction, even after the speaker's there, and being able to sit with somebody and schmooze a bit. We also did, like Bar-Ilan was actually one of the more successful ones. It was the Bacon Sadat Center, where we were able to set up with the different law firms in the city, sort of a lunch and learn, where we would come to the law firm, bring a speaker from the Bar-Ilan program, which, was basically political, more on the conservative side, but certainly to analyze what was going on in the Middle East. And they loved it. It was a great break for the lawyers at the time. They learned a lot about what we were doing at the university, especially from at the Bacon Sadat Center, which is very respected. So it still works. I think it's still far better if you can do it in person. It's a much better happening if you can do it, because a lot of it, the interaction happens after the fact with the speaker. If you want to raise nice money, of course, which is ultimately what it's about.
Now, is it important to have different events based on a certain demographic, specifically a professional demographic. So you mentioned lawyers.
Right.
I had physicians.
Right.
Uh,
Mhm.
I don't remember, it was so long ago, but I could see physicians, accountants, attorneys. We had a women's division, which I did away with because it was silly in our case, because women were the leaders of the federation, so why have a special division for women? And they agreed. It was they had somebody said, we already burst through the glass ceiling, so let's clean up the fragments on the floor and just stop wasting everybody's time and money, because these things cost money. To plan an event costs money. How important are these groups where you bring professionals together?
I mean, you really have to assess each agency. Like in the case of the Bergen Federation, their women's division definitely made sense because they had probably over 1,000 women who always like to get together for their particular events, and they had their own speakers and their own culture. So in that case, it really worked well. You know, when you're in other smaller or more moderate, especially national, it's much harder agencies to, bring people together. Again, there often has to be done, via the Zooms. But so there, it might not work as quite as well, but it's important definitely to break up, to your target specific audience. They all have different interests. Again, Federation probably did it best. We had, one again for doctors, for accounts attorneys, which actually I ran for a few years, and they always had an event geared for their particular interests. Again, it's important to get their feedback from their leadership as to what they want to hear about. Often it's surprising, has nothing to do. Legal people, the least thing they want to hear about is legal issues.
That's
So they
true.
want, usually in this case, it was a lot about Israel analysis and such. So, but you really have to take in from each group what they're most interested in. Young leadership certainly is more the case than ever, and making sure whatever speaker, whatever event we do for them, we get the input up front as to what they'd be interested in.
Young leadership is one that was very
Right.
important that I forgot.
Right.
We had a doctor's event every year,
Mhm.
and we'd arrange for a speaker.
Mhm.
And I remember for $15,000, I could have gotten Jonas Salk to come and speak. And I spoke with the leadership of the group, and they said, no. I said, look, all that means is to be in the medical society. We call it the Maimonides Society.
Mhm.
You had to give at least $5,000. I said, all we need is 3 people who are willing to give $5,000 to get their picture taken with Jonas Salk. What's the big deal? They said no. All right. They're the bosses. We didn't do it. Sadly, he passed away a couple months after our event. And then my phone started ringing. And it was all the same. Bruce, we should have listened to you. Bruce, you were right. Bruce, we blew it. And I said to them, I know. I would have
And
liked to have met them, man.
I've been fortunate to hear like people like Eli Wiesel and so on. Also, not shortly before he passed, at the Federation event, so on. So usually speakers are not the make or break, but when it comes to somebody like that,
Yeah.
people of international fame who are reasonably priced, certainly
Yeah.
when it comes to bringing out people, I think well worth the investment.
We had Eli
Mm,
Wiesel as well, and
mm,
he was just phenomenal and
right.
not what anybody expected.
And but
But
it really comes down. I mean, like young families. That was one of the first things I did in Federation World was launch the marketing for this connections program. A colleague of mine who really was gung ho, and so it basically bring unaffiliated families not connected primarily to synagogues. And so we worked very hard for about 2-year period, reaching out, and we were able to, put together events, again, a lot of hands-on type of events that they wanted to do, and really getting the feedback from them as to what was important to them in their lives. And many, I think it was over 600-700 families that were involved at some point, and a lot of them have affiliated. And I think that goes across the board, not only for the Jewish community, but for the Christian community as well. Getting people to come to churches and synagogues is increasingly challenging. So it's that type of programming that, is really a pleasure to be marketing, to get people to see the value in whatever what they're interested in.
I want to go full circle. Now, the for-profit you were with, the architecture firm,
Right.
they had these types of events?
I mean, they're more sort of old school as far as go, but they go to the big on conferences. Networking is key, particularly the golf clubs and so on. So that I think we did move them slowly but surely. When I first got there, I think they maybe had 150 to maybe 200 followers on LinkedIn. I left at about 800 or some odd. So we about 4 times the numbers. Again, showing the stories of where their projects impacted lives and such. They had some open houses. Again, I over time try to push them to be out more in the community. I just set them up with Kane University, talking to some of the architecture students there. Different types of more community-oriented activities. They do a lot with chambers, speaking there. So certainly different, but related. They're certainly out in the field and meeting and greeting and networking. That's really the key. Architecture, it's evolving because only 20 years ago, it was like beneath them to to do a lot of this sort of outreach. But now a lot of competition out there, so they really have to be very much more community oriented. One of the things I got for them was getting awards for their different principles, and so that brought them into the fold. NJ Biz in that case. So meeting the people there who go to those gatherings. So that was very helpful in making some new contacts for them.
I want to put up your contact information and ask one final question.
Okay.
Is there anything I did not ask that you wish I had asked? And if I had asked it, what would you have said?
I think we covered the main points that we wanted to make. Again, it all comes back to putting the human face on what people are doing with the different agencies that, or in this case, even for-profit organizations are doing to help the community. I think, we live in challenging, often divisive times. So anything that could bring people together and see a future that is more upbeat, more united, I think that's important. That somehow the nonprofits have to show that that's possible through some of the work they're doing. I think certainly in the Jewish community these days, that very much comes back to Israel and many of the challenges that are going on there. Actually, tonight I'm just chairing an event for my synagogue, looking at some of the issues of, unfortunately, the growth of anti-Semitism, terrorism, what synagogues can do together to try to counter some of this. So we have a speaker that I brought in. So in whatever part of your life, whether a volunteer or for your professional life, I've always looked at both as sort of in combination. We have to really speak out at this point and bring people together and see the common values that we share, positive values.
Well, Alan, I thank you. I've enjoyed this because I'm prejudiced about nonprofits, and I like how it's possible to combine in some way the nonprofit with the for-profit sectors.
Right.
So you've given some food for thought to, I'm sure, a good number of people, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bruce. It's been a pleasure as always. Take care.
I'm Bruce Hurwitz. Thank you for watching. And as always, please stay focused on success.